that time I was training, I was in my doctoral program, and read an article for one of my classes where they talked about a man who was studying seizures for the government. And he was injecting cats with jet fuel to induce seizures. And he threw out a bunch of cats from the study because they would not seize. So I called them up and I said, what was different about those cats? Why wouldn't they seize? And he said to me, oh, you know, they were in one of those wacky alternative medicine experiments on biofeedback. And I said, well, can you tell me who the wacky guy was that did that? And he did, and I contacted him, and I said, what did you do with these cats that they didn't seize? Because my son has an uncontrollable seizure disorder. And he said, well, we implanted electrodes in their brain and trained them to produce 13 to 15 hertz brainwaves. And I thought, oh, I can't do that with my son. How close can I get to it? And before I went into, I have a circuitous career. I first was in engineering. I then trained for the ministry. And then they wouldn't let any women pastor a church, so I went into psychology. So I still had some engineering background. And I said, well, I'm going to build my own machine. And I created a machine that when my son was starting to seize, it would give him feedback of a red light. And when his brain was improving and functioning, it would give him a green light. Well, it was a very primitive form of neurofeedback. One of the first instances of it being used in the United States. And I had to train my son for 2 years. But the good part of this is it's 40 years later. He's been medication-free and seizure-free for 40 years. So that's how I got into this field, and I initially started working with children with seizures and learning disabilities and ADHD. But when my husband passed away, I had just adopted a baby girl. And we lived up in the Catskill Mountains, and to heat my house, I had to chop wood every day and carry it up a flight of stairs and bring the baby with me. And I thought, oh, this is just too much work, so I moved to Sebring. Yeah. And when I got to Sebring, what I decided was, wow, the need here is for people to help seniors. And so I think I'm probably the first person in the United States who started using these techniques to treat seniors with dementias. But I'm totally clinically oriented. I don't publish anymore. I did back in the day, but I'd rather be with my patients, so I don't do that. However, now other people are taking this up and they're doing the publishing. So the first thing I want to say about dementias is Western medicine has it 100% wrong. They think dementia is only Alzheimer's, and that's not true. Alzheimer's is one specific type of dementia that's inherited. So if your mom or dad did not have Alzheimer's, you cannot have it. Okay? And doctors misinform people on that all the time. But in reality, in America, dementias are increasing dramatically. And we are seeing them in patients as young as 40 years old. So it's not an inherited problem. It is because of toxins in our food and in our water and in our air and the COVID vaccine. The COVID vaccine has led to millions of dementias. So, all right, so what is dementia? Dementia is a whole group of cognitive disorders that are characterized by changes in your cognitive function. changes in your attention, your concentration, your memory, your language use. What a lot of people don't recognize, however, is before these show up, usually there's changes in personality. And what I mean by that is people stop wanting to be in groups. They stop wanting to go out as much. They stop wanting to have the family over as much. And it's because they're starting to struggle cognitively and they don't know what's going on. Most of the time, by the time a senior is dragged to the office by a family member to see their MD, it's really, really late. And that really concerns me. I try very hard to tell all the MDs around, please, 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 tell every patient over the age of 50 to come and get a cognitive eval every year. Your insurance covers it. All you have is your copay. And the reason is twofold. One, if we do it and your brain is healthy, then I have a baseline of where you are healthy. So the next time you come back, if there's a change, I'll know it right away. And the second reason is because contrary to what your medical doctors will tell you, most dementias are reversible. Yes. And not with medicine. In fact, a full 50% of the people who MDs kindly refer to me saying they have dementia, the dementia is actually being caused by prescribed medications they have the patient on. And so I'm constantly trying to politely suggest to MDs, let's back down on the medications, the dosages, let's look at healthy alternatives to address whatever the issues are. But prevalence is right now in the age group 70 to 79, they say between 10 to 20%. But those are the ones who have been diagnosed and sent to the doctor. It's really much, much higher. So it's important, go for the evaluations. It's going to take up 3 hours of your day. It's worth the 3 hours of your day. Okay. The other misbelief that really bothers me is when somebody goes to their MD and they say, you know, I'm not remembering things as well as I used to. And the MD does this simple little thing. I'm going to give you 3 words, remember them, and then ask you the 3 words. Maybe you get them, maybe you miss one. But they tell you that the changes in your cognition are a part of natural aging. They are not. I cannot emphasize that enough. They are not a part of natural aging. If you are physically healthy, your brain should be functioning the way it was when you were 20. If it's not, you have a physical problem impacting on your health. And we need to uncover what the cause is and try to eliminate it so that you don't continue to get worse. The other myth, which I will mention, is that you can't prevent dementias. You can, and we can talk about that at some point, but probably don't have enough time today. But when we look at dementia, we're looking at executive functions, your ability to plan and organize and weigh alternatives, make good decisions, follow through on things. We're looking at your memory, mostly your immediate memory, because most people with dementia, until it's very, very far advanced, can remember the past just fine. We're looking at language. Are you communicating as well as you used to? And for those wonderful people who are bilingual, if you start to speak in your original language, it's a major sign of a dementia. So if you've been raised speaking Spanish, came to America, and you're speaking English for 40 years, and suddenly you're not remembering the English words, but you're remembering the Spanish words, you need to go get an evaluation. And the fourth one I want to talk about, visual spatial, because people don't recognize this as a problem. We are a very verbal, linguistic country and culture. We don't pay a lot of focus on visual spatial. So a lot of people don't know that if you have visual spatial changes, it is a sign of a dementia. So what are those? Starting to bump into things, tripping, falling. You're driving the car and your wife's holding on for dear life saying, "You're too close, you're too close." That's a sign of dementia. Yeah. And that's because the person who's experiencing these changes doesn't know it. So it looks fine to them. But the poor person in the passenger seat is about to have a heart attack. Yeah. So that's a time to bring your spouse in to be evaluated. Yeah, driving slow is another sign. Yeah. Yeah, it is. Okay, so the big 5 dementias that medical doctors talk about are Alzheimer's, Lewy body disease, Parkinson's, frontotemporal dementia, and vascular dementia. However, Parkinson's disease, they still say we don't know the cause of. That's not true, because I have evaluated so many thousands of patients, and everybody I've ever had with Parkinson's disease has had chemical exposure. Often they worked on a farm or in a nursery or in a factory, or they were a veteran stationed someplace where there were chemicals or burn pits. So Parkinson's is some sort of poisoning from toxins. We just can't say which one because people are exposed to too many of them. Frontotemporal dementia, that one is related to a buildup of proteins in the brain, which we're not sure of what triggers that, except we do know the COVID vaccine triggers it. And the COVID vaccine causes a lot of vascular and cardiac damage. If you have vascular damage, you're not getting an adequate supply of nutrition and oxygen to your brain. Therefore, brain function declines. And so I'm really always telling people, you know, if you walk in the door and you have vascular problems or cardiac problems, I want that to be aggressively addressed by your MD, or it's going to continue to do more and more brain damage. Another cause that the medicine, you know, they pretty much don't pay attention to is sleep apnea. Sleep apnea causes significant reduction in oxygen to the brain and consequently causes brain damage. The Lewy body, there's not enough research that says what causes it, but that is also related to excess proteins in the brain. Okay. So, but there are other causes I'd like to talk about that are less common, but important. Thyroid disorders can cause dementia. Nutritional deficiencies. And in America, we have huge nutritional deficiencies in our seniors and our children. And the reason is not necessarily that they're not getting enough food. It's the food has lost its nutritional value. And so you could be eating a lot of food, but if you're eating processed foods, you're damaging your brain. So I'm very unpopular with my patients on this. My message is grow it at home, do it organically. That's it. Because there's almost nothing in the stores that you can buy that's safe. Now, there is an app for those of you who use smartphones called Wise Code. And if you download that app and you go grocery shopping, scan the barcodes. It will tell you how dangerous that food is. Wise, W-I-S-E, code, C-O-D-E. But pretty much, if you go in the grocery store, only buy stuff on the 4 outer rows, nothing in the middle, and don't buy it if it's not organic. The other thing is organic food that's packaged in plastics is dangerous because we are getting a lot of dementias from microplastics. They're in our food, they're in our water. If you own your own home, put on a water filtration system that is specifically made to filter out microplastics because they cross the blood-brain barrier and they do brain damage. And it doesn't matter what medicine a doctor's going to give you, they can't treat that. Okay. Infections, things like pneumonia, HIV, COVID does brain damage, metabolic disorders, and the biggie, medications. I literally have people who come into my office who are on 20 medications, and their doctors have not sat down with them and gone over all the side effects of these medications and how they affect your brain. So it's one of the things I do with all my patients is I go through all the meds, I let them know all the ones that are dangerous, which doesn't make the MDs too happy. So what I tell you to do is go to your pharmacist and say, I like to pay you for a consultation. Because they know the meds and the dangers of them much, much better than your MDs. And the pharmacist can often tell you another med to use that has less side effects or a natural intervention you could use instead. I'll give you an example. How many people here take a pill for water retention and high blood pressure? Okay. Of course, none of the MDs tell you that if you ate dandelion salad every day, you probably wouldn't need the med. Dandelion salad, leaves from the dandelion plant. Yeah, they grow wild, and they're really healthy. And they make your body get rid of excess water, and they lower your blood pressure. Yeah. And you have to understand, your doctors are well-intended, but A, they have too many patients, too little time to see them, but they are trained to use pharmaceuticals. And pharmaceutical companies are here for one purpose, to make a big profit. Our medical doctors used to use a lot of herbal treatments until FDR made it almost impossible for them to do that because he was opening up pharmaceutical companies. Yeah. And so that's when the change started. So another cause of dementia is alcohol use. And I know people will say, oh, 1 or 2 beers is not a problem. I'm here to tell you it is. Okay. I hope you're not drinking that. Yeah. There are people who drink it. Believe me, I've seen them. Yeah. And obviously, substance abuse. And substance abuse can include prescribed medications that you're not taking the way they were intended to be taken. So, the last major cause that I like to point out is depression. Many, many, many seniors in America are depressed. They don't like to say they're depressed, especially the baby boomers and the silent generation. They consider it that they shouldn't be depressed. They shouldn't be having those feelings, so they don't tell the doctor. But depression mimics dementia. It impairs your memory. It impairs your attention and concentration. It decreases your involvement in the world around you. So many, many seniors who are depressed are put on anti-dementia medications, and they don't need them. We just need to address the depression. And I don't believe in meds for depression either, but that's another whole lecture. Okay. History of TBIs increases the likelihood of your getting a dementia. So if you were a young man who had ADHD and you played football and you had a couple of bicycle accidents and a couple of motorcycle accidents, you're really at high risk for a dementia. So those people need to be evaluated starting very young and consistently. Traumatic brain injury. I'm so sorry I didn't say that. And traumatic brain injuries, oftentimes I ask people, did you ever have a traumatic brain injury? And they tell me no. Then I go and do a brain map, and there's a traumatic brain injury. And it's not that they're lying to me, it's that they don't realize what can cause a traumatic brain injury. If you're playing soccer and you're a kid and you get hit too hard in the head, it can give you a traumatic brain injury. But children don't lose consciousness as easily as adults, so their parents never know they had a traumatic brain injury. A baby could fall out of a high chair or down the steps. Because they don't lose consciousness, mom and dad don't know they sustained a traumatic brain injury. But we can pick that up when we do the evaluations. ADHD is a really high predictor of developing dementia. And the reason is because people with ADHD are 90 times more likely than the rest of us to get in a serious accident. Huh? Okay. So, we want to, if we have people in our family who are diagnosed with ADHD, everybody prescribes medicine. The medicine does not fix the problem. And with neurofeedback, we can correct permanently 95% of ADHD cases. But the pharmaceutical companies would prefer you just keep on buying meds for your entire life. Environmental toxins, and these are just increasing. We have solvents, the planes that fly over and they have the trails behind them. Those are all toxic chemicals. The pesticides, the herbicides, the plastics, even buying bottled water in a plastic bottle is dangerous. So you can buy good bottled water in glass bottles. They cost a little more, but they'll save your brain. Mold is a big issue in Florida. They're terrible. Yeah, they say that. But the research doesn't back them up. Buy a steel thermos. Buy the steel thermoses. They're the safest things you can do. I'm sorry, hon? Stainless steel is great. Yeah. And if you don't want to buy a whole house water system, 4 Patriots and My Patriot Supply sell water filters that you can put next to your sink. And before you use the water for drinking or cleaning vegetables or anything, you run it through that. They're among the best filters available. 4 Patriots, the number 4 and Patriots, and My Patriot Supply. Yes. Yes. Distilled water helps, but it doesn't get everything. And unfortunately, if I just went over this with a whole group of my patients, the water plants in Highlands County are all deficient. So based on where you live, I can tell you which types of filtration systems you need. Different parts of Highlands County, the water plants have different problems. Yeah, Sun Lakes is a big problem. There's no area in Highlands County where the water is safe. Not safe. Yeah. I did a whole research project on it to give my patients each water company and what the problem is. Right. Right. No, the refrigerator water filters are not strong enough. They definitely don't get all the toxins, and they don't get any of the plastics. Boiling the water helps. It kills the bacteria, but doesn't do anything about plastics or pesticides or herbicides. Yeah, no, it's not strong enough. I got to go on because I got so much more to hear with you. Depends on where you live and what's polluting your water. It's different in different parts of Sebring. I'd have to show you individually. Okay. The other major cause of a dementia is hearing loss. And this is an issue that I really want to impress upon seniors. If you don't wear your hearing aids, you are dramatically increasing the risk of developing dementia. So wear your hearing aids, because if you don't, the cells in your temporal lobe just begin to die. And it actually causes the brain mass to decrease and the brain to shrink. Okay, so I'm going to go on. The early signs. Sometimes people don't recognize the signs themselves, and it's their kids who are saying, "Mom, I already told you that. Don't you remember we talked about this?" Or, "Why are you so slow on that computer? Why can't you learn to work that remote control?" Those are early signs of dementia. You shouldn't be having those problems. If you are, you should come for an evaluation, and we should see how advanced it is. So, if you have a head injury, a bleed, if you have thyroid disease, a B12 deficiency, a D3 deficiency, depression, anxiety, alcoholism, dementia from medications, all of those dementias can be reversed. And unfortunately, the MDs either don't realize it or don't tell you because the insurance companies give them a hard time. They don't want to pay for it. In terms of interventions, traditional interventionism in America is to give you drugs. That's it. And so think of if I have 5 brain cells and they're all communicating and 3 of them die. What they do is the remaining ones can't communicate well because the gap is too big. So what they do is they give you medications that fill up that gap so the medicine can get across. The problem is they're not getting stimulated enough, so this one's going to die. And then this one has nothing to communicate with, and you get cerebral atrophy and the brain shrinks. interventions we do use no medications. We actually use brainwave training and get the remaining brain cells to grow and reconnect and pick up functions they had lost. The other intervention we use is called photobiomodulation. Big word, it's infrared light therapy. And what the infrared light does is it goes into the brain cells that are sick but have not died and corrects the replication of the RNA. And this is a particularly effective technique for people who had COVID or the COVID vaccine, because both COVID and the COVID vaccine damage reproduction of the RNA. And the photobiomodulation can completely reverse that. So these are non-pharmacological interventions that are highly effective. So what's the drawback? Drawback is they're slow. It's like going to the gym and saying, I want to lose 100 pounds. You can do it, but you can't do it, just go to the gym for 3 weeks. You're going to be doing it for a while and you have to be consistent. Well, the brain is just like any other muscle in the body. If you're going to improve it, it takes time and repetition. So that's the drawback. Let me go on. So common treatments are all the meds, which I'm not going to go through because you can get that from your doctors. The NUN study is one of the things that really impressed on me, that we could use these non-pharmacological interventions. This was done in the 60s because there was a convent of nuns that lived pretty close to 100, and none of them had any signs of dementia. So a bunch of psychologists went in and said, can we test you every year, see what's going on? And would you donate your brains at death so we could see how your brains differ? And they checked their diet, their exercise, everything. None of these women showed any signs of dementia. But when they died, many of them did have it. It had not affected their function. And what they discovered, it was because these women were lifelong learners. Most of them entered the convent while in high school and went on to get a high school diploma, a bachelor's, a master's, another master's, a doctorate, another doctorate. So they were constantly stimulating their brain. And that constant stimulation caused their brain to keep growing new connections. So although they did have diseases that affected their brain, they kept getting other cells to grow and pick up the function. Which is, I know I'm not popular on this either, but if you have a choice, don't retire. The surest way to hasten a dementia is to retire. You need to have your brain challenged. And if you do retire, you need to be really active. You need to be volunteering. You need to be learning new things. It's not just busy. It has to be something totally new to stimulate your brain. So, I'm skipping some of this because we're not going to have enough time. We will say that people with the higher IQs have better outcomes when they come for treatment for dementias. People with lower IQs, it's harder for us to treat. But our effectiveness for neurofeedback is really great. And I'm going to go forward here. This is a brain map from one of my patients who kindly gave me permission to use it. Where you see the red, that person's brain was so impaired that the damage was greater than 99% of the people in the world. Okay? So this is pre-treatment, and this is halfway through the treatment. Dramatic improvement. This patient had a Lewy body dementia, so he had a problem with anger control that kept getting worse and worse and worse. until he was breaking furniture, throwing things, throwing glasses, and his family was going to have to put him in a nursing home because they weren't safe. And you can see the 2 red spots there in the top one and all the red in the bottom circle. This is before we treated him, and this is after. Green is completely normal. So the treatment works. It takes time. But I want people to know there's an alternative to just going in a nursing home and dying, and there's an alternative to taking a bunch of meds. I also want to mention, for those who maybe are a little younger and you have parents who you think are slipping, the number one worst thing you can do is move them out of their home. Don't move them to a different state to be near you. Don't move them to a house near you. That will definitely accelerate the dementia. So wherever you are as a senior, plan to stay there. If you need to, bring help in to maintain your home. Don't you move, because as you have a dementia, your brain does not have the same capacity to adjust. And a lot of well-meaning children think, oh, I'll just move mom and dad up by me. It's a really negative impact. Yeah, sundowner syndrome. Well, the brain functions better with full spectrum light. So as the light decreases, the brain function decreases. An easy way to help treat that is go to Home Depot and buy full spectrum light bulbs and replace all the light bulbs in your house and turn them on around 4 o'clock. And you'll see a big improvement in functioning. Yes. Absolutely. Yes. And that's why we do brain mapping, so I can figure out which it is. Because it's completely different treatment. No. It's not covered by insurance. And I will tell you this. It used to be covered by insurance. But then Mr. Obama got in and decided it wasn't important to give care to seniors, and he eliminated it. Because I'm a Christian and because I believe it's so crucial, I do the brain mapping for free. Because otherwise I can't tell if it's dementia or depression. And it's a big difference in the treatment. Behaviors are similar. Absolutely.
You have a question? Please use the mic so everybody can.
Oh, thank you. The photobiome, I do the neurofeedback in my office. I do not do photobiomodulation in my office because that involves an electrode that goes up the nasal cavity. And after COVID came, I thought I didn't want to be responsible. So people who do want to do photobiomodulation, I tell them what machine to buy and how to use it, and they do that at home. So there's also transcranial magnetic stimulation. That's a treatment for depression, which is highly effective. Sure. You have a question? Yeah.
I have 2 questions. I have 2 questions. One, I did the COVID vaccines. I do the 2 first, and then I do the booster. And 3 weeks after I do the booster, not even 3 weeks, 2 weeks, I was in the hospital that I have COVID. And since then, my whole body is just changed.
Absolutely.
And they're telling me I have this, I have that, I have all sorts of arthritis, and all sorts of stuff.
Because the COVID vaccine changed the way that God intended the DNA and RNA to function, it's created systemic problems.
Yes, a whole lot.
And so I have a lot of patients I'm treating for the consequences of COVID
Yeah,
vaccines.
and they want to give me all these medication for rheumatoid and
Right.
osteo, and I said no.
But
I told
those
my
aren't
doctor.
the problem.
I told my doctor I want no rat poison, so I'm using natural stuff, herbs and
Yes.
stuff like that. So I don't take them.
And one of the really sad things about the COVID vaccine is it continues to do damage every year the rest of your life.
That's what I'm experiencing.
Yeah. They simply didn't do enough testing on that vaccine before they released it.
No.
Well, we have had success in reversing the effects on the brain. What I don't know is how long they're going to hold. Most other disorders, we can do the treatment, we're done. With COVID, a lot of my patients, when they're done with me, we have to set them up with home units to continue because COVID continues to damage the cardiovascular system.
Okay. My second question: I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer, 2014, and I do the whole ectomy. Everything is out, but I have to take one Synthroid for the rest of my life. They said every day.
That's not going to impact you significantly.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
I don't know. Sorry.
I don't know if it was a lie or not, but I work with the school system, and back then there were so many kids coming down with this, and they said that people that were older than 60 needed to go and get the COVID vaccine,
Mm-hmm.
and that is the reason I took it.
It's the reason a lot
And-
of people took it.
And I said, well, okay, and that is how I introduced her to the COVID thing. But I don't know if I'm lucky or not. It was one time I went and got an injection, and I had some work to do, and it was outside in the sunlight. And I think she was away, and I was trying to get it done. It was the fence or something. And the plaster that they'd put on here to hold it in or whatever,
Right.
it began to drain everything like it was coming out because it was in the hot sun and doing my stuff.
So you might have.
And I did not realize it. She is who realized it, So,
Yeah. Well, you were lucky.
But- So-
Here's
so
the problem. Americans, we have historically trusted our government.
Yep.
But, we know for a fact that previously in our history, our government used black men for experimental treatments. And yes, and they didn't inform anybody. Well, when we look at COVID, Bill Gates had a patent for the COVID virus in 2014. He was involved in funding the research at Hunan, China. And Bill Gates is the guy up there constantly saying we need to reduce the population. And now in America, they haven't been reporting it much, but Africa has been honest and saying how many abortions the vaccine created in young women who were pregnant and how many young women it sterilized. And while the U.S. is not attributing it to the vaccine, our birth rate is now less than 0. That's why the Democrats want illegals here, because they don't want us to realize how badly they've been poisoning us and how it's affecting our ability to have children. Yeah, I'm sorry. What they're doing is everything opposite of what God says. God says, be fruitful and multiply, and they're doing everything they can to do the opposite. Even, I don't know, many of you people are familiar with Planned Parenthood. The founder of Planned Parenthood worked for Hitler, sterilizing blacks and Hispanics. And when she came here to America, she rebranded those experiments as Planned Parenthood and put them all in inner city black neighborhoods on purpose. So what they try to twist the truth and say, oh, we're trying to help you plan families and not have more children than you can support. In reality, they just are trying to control who reproduces and who doesn't. And unfortunately, so many Americans don't read history. We don't study it. We don't look at the original documents. So we don't see what's happening.
I tell my wife this every day. You know, I say it every day, but being in this system, and I say certain things, they'll kick me out. I wouldn't have a job.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know,
that's true.
And then most likely they will come after me, even though I'm a citizen of this United States. They'll kick me out to my country, which I just don't
Yeah.
care.
Which is why I work for myself and not for any hospital. Because I'm going to do what I believe God wants me to do and not what some administration is saying I should do. Yeah.
One moment, please. Mr. Robin.
Yes, hi. I really appreciate your presentation. It's been very, very informative, and I really do like it. But I will have to say that I attended another type of presentation, which was a totally different subject, that also made the same type of comments about the Affordable Care Act. It's not Obamacare, it's the Affordable Care Act. And when I hear the misquotes about it, I can't help but say something, because in 2015, we had a capstone project, a research team, and our project was to research. We had to do thorough research on the Affordable Care Act, and it did not take away things for seniors per se, just in generalized statement like
Not
that.
generalized, but it did
Right.
take away the specific billing codes to treat dementia non-pharmacologically.
Right. That may have been true, because Part D and Part C and blah, 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 the Affordable Care Act is very extensive.
Extremely
And the
so.
overall impact of Affordable Care Act was to increase preventative care usage, which it was a tremendous crisis in America, especially among the minority groups, the blacks and so forth, and it increased Medicare.
It did. And you know
It
what?
did a lot of good, but I generally hear
it did
that.
do a lot of good, but it was specifically this particular service, which impacted primarily seniors and disabled children, was eliminated.
But there are so many aspects of Affordable Care Act
Absolutely.
for seniors that was very beneficial.
Absolutely.
So we can't, and I'm just saying, and I really do appreciate you, but I'm just asking, please, in presentations like that, when you make a statement, people don't know the other parts of it, and then they create a general disliking of the Affordable Care Act, thinking, oh man, she's a doctor and she knows that it didn't do something good for seniors, but there's so many aspects
There
that
are
it did
many
help seniors.
aspects, and some of
It
them
did.
were good
We
for
researched it.
seniors, and certainly good for those who were uninsured. But in this one specific field, it was a negative output. To be honest, is it Robin? I'm increasingly unhappy with insurance in the entire United States, because we're not making decisions based on what's best for our patients.
Part of our research discovered that was a major issue with insurance, and we're talking about just insurance in general.
Absolutely,
All right,
insurance in
it was
general.
increasing so bad that business owners could no longer offer insurance for their employees, and it was a real problematic situation. They were losing employees. Mom and pop places were closing down because they just could not afford
Absolutely.
it. Insurance was poor legislation among the government. They were just out of control with their prices and so forth. But the Affordable Care Act, these business owners were like, you saved us. It was such a joy, because
was,
it
in
gave
that
them the
respect.
tax credits and what have you, so that they could keep their businesses open and give insurance
Yes.
to their employees.
But
But people
don't-
don't say it.
beyond the Affordable Care Act,
Yeah.
insurance in general in the United
Yeah.
States puts profit before the patients.
Yeah.
I'm not just saying the
insurance
Affordable
is
Care
terrible.
Act. I'm saying insurance in general. And I know because I owned an insurance agency for 10 years.
Yeah.
And now it is getting worse because they're moving AI into making predeterminations and handling appeals. The average person can't argue with AI.
Yeah.
They don't have the resources to do it.
Yeah.
So I'm not just targeting affordable care. The
Right.
insurance is not
It's the insurance companies that whatever,
right.
because
and
what
it wasn't
happened with the
just in
affordable
the Affordable Care insurance that this code was removed. It was removed in all of them.
Yeah. So what happened is, because I know for a fact, I was looking for insurance for my daughter when she was in college, and the premium was very affordable. I was very, well, not very affordable, but affordable. But when the Affordable Care Act came into place and these insurance companies realized that the government was going to subsidize to help people get insurance, the premiums skyrocketed
Exactly.
because of the fact that they were going to get government money. So it's not the Affordable Care Act that has caused insurance to be a problem. It's the insurance companies.
It's insurance companies in general. Now, when I had my practice in New York, I happened to live near to Manhattan, so people had money. And I got fed up and just said to all my patients, I'm not taking any insurance. You're going to pay me cash, and you're going to pay half of what the insurance would pay, because then I could give people the care they needed. But Highlands County, we have a population here that couldn't afford to do cash, so I have to take the insurance if I want to serve people. And I get very frustrated at them turning down care that people need. And it's all the insurance companies, all the Medicare programs, it's all of them. But I think the thing I most want to get across today is dementia is preventable. And if you catch it early, it's reversible. Even Alzheimer's, which is hereditary and definitely progressive, and Lewy body, which is definitely progressive, you can gain substantial amount of time. I will say that my average patient gains 7 to 8 years being home and not in a nursing home. That's a long time. I have one patient who, if I just get the free time to write up, she had Lewy body dementia diagnosed 17 years ago. Most patients with Lewy body dementia die in 3 years. This patient goes up every year to Columbia University to have MRIs, and when she went up this year, the head of the department said, we have no idea what Dr. Crumb's doing, but we have nobody who's functioning like you. And they most die at 3 years. So it's not a cure, but she can still drive a car and still work. And this is 17 years after diagnosis. So I think my message is there's hope. Some people come in when it's very, very late, and then we have less success. But I will say the least success, poor gentleman, I'm not picking on you, but lots of times the gentlemen say, oh, I lived long enough, I don't want to be bothered. Women are more motivated overall to address the problem and fix it.
Thank you. Is there how advanced, is there a limitation as to where you can help someone? In essence, does it have to be in the early stages, or if they're in the advanced stages, can you still help them?
I'm going to tell you, I've gotten improvement on people in nursing homes. So it just depends if they're willing to do it. And it also depends on what you mean by help. For instance, I might have somebody, which I do now, I have 2 people who, it's so advanced they're hearing voices. Am I going to be able to totally eliminate the voices? No. But am I going to be able to teach them to control them so they don't hurt themselves or somebody else? Yes. So when you say, how late, it depends on what the problem is and what your goal is. But that one person who I showed you who was violent and they were going to have to hospitalize him, all the symptoms are gone now. we're 5 years out from his treatment ending.
I'm sorry, I came in just a little bit late. I didn't hear your specialty. What area? You're in,
Neuropsychology.
oh, you're a neuropsychologist. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah. And you're still able to take insurance, you said.
I do.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
The only insurance I can't take is Medicaid. Medicare I can, but just not Medicaid. Yes. Do you know where Dr. Patel's office is? I'm next door. The one across the street from Highlands? The gastroenterologist? Yeah. My office is right next to him. I'm in the big building that's set back a little bit.
Brother Shaw. Yeah, at the beginning of your speech, you talk about seizure. Does
Yes.
seizure have anything to do with Alzheimer's?
No, not necessarily. However, if somebody has Alzheimer's because of exposure to toxins, they may have seizures. You know, the other thing that we're seeing more dementias from, it's kind of unusual in the South, is people getting Lyme disease. That used to be something we saw in the Northeast, but the ticks have migrated along with the birds. And Floridians are not as aware of how to protect themselves from them. So we are starting to see more people with Lyme disease also. And that crosses the blood-brain barrier when it's severe and causes a dementia. Yes. Yeah, it seems to be. On COVID, we're in a tough spot because the U.S. is not funding any research. But Korea is, China is, Israel is, Africa is. And when you look at the other nations, it's very clear that the vaccine created serious damage. And so what we're getting with, and I noticed it because I've been doing brain maps for 50 years, and I began seeing patterns I never saw before. And so I started asking people, did you have COVID and did you have the COVID vaccine? And uniformly, they had the vaccine. So we've been treating those and getting a reversal. But because it's a COVID vaccine and that affects your DNA, we don't know how long that improvement's going to hold.
What about for patients that may not have symptoms of dementia, just your average person that that took the COVID vaccine? I know you talked about the DNA and how it affects that, but is it less impactful, and does your treatment help those individuals better?
It really depends on what the person is presenting with. For some reason, the COVID vaccine affected young men more than it did anybody else. And a lot of those young men are just suddenly dying of heart attacks at young ages. So I think that it affected young men more because they have an X chromosome and a Y chromosome. So we have two X chromosomes, so if one was damaged, the other one could pick up and protect us. But I don't have a good answer. I can tell you this. I don't do it here in Sebring because it's not the population to do it with. But in New York, I used to do this treatment for people who had no illnesses because golfers would come in and say, I want to improve my golf game. And they had strong, healthy brains. And in 10 sessions, we could dramatically improve their golf score. We would a lot of the major football teams have people who do neurofeedback that travel with them to do this treatment to minimize the impact of the hits they take. So the healthier the brain, the more benefit you're going to get from it.
The brain mapping, thank you. The brain mapping, use the insurance company, the insurance companies in times past never covered brain mapping. Do they cover it now? Are you getting payment for doing brain mapping now? I know you said you don't charge for that, I think you said, but I know that some years ago, the insurance companies did not cover
They don't.
brain mapping. And
They
that was about between $700 and $1,000 or $1,200 even for brain
Yeah.
mapping is how much it was.
They do not cover
So
it.
they still don't cover it.
And part of that is, again, the pharmaceutical companies have a real lobby in the insurance industry.
Right.
And they don't want brain mapping and non-pharmacological treatments. And they know that brain mapping is used as a baseline for
For the neurofeedback.
non-pharmacological
And they don't want to
treatment.
cover neurofeedback either because they said
Correct.
it's right.
Well,
It's
they
a-
prefer, at one point, we went as a group to the major insurance companies and said, look, you're putting kids on meds for ADD,
Right.
and they have to stay on it for their entire
autism.
life.
Yeah.
And it shortens their lifespan by about 10 to 15 years. And we did the math to show them it was much cheaper to pay for the brain map and the neurofeedback.
Right. That's
And we said, why aren't you going to do that? And they said, we're not going to do that because most people change their insurance every year to year and a half. So we only figure our expense on that 12 to 18 months.
Yeah.
Then the expense is somebody else's. So even though it was more cost effective in the long run, they were not motivated to cover it.
right.
Now, nowadays, my colleagues in Manhattan are charging like $5,000
For the neurofeedback.
for just the brain
For the
mapping.
brain mapping.
And I know on both coasts
Yeah.
in Florida, they're charging like $3,500.
Yeah. We
I only do it for free because, like I say, for me, it's a ministry.
right. Yes. Wow. Yeah. 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 Thank you.
Yes.
So there are alternative methods of treating ADHD.
Oh, yes. And we have a really high success rate with treating ADHD. All the research shows 93 to 95% success rate with no medicine. And you really don't want to treat ADHD with medicine because what you're communicating to that young person is if you don't feel good, take a substance. And then we are surprised that they go from ADHD meds to cocaine to meth, which are chemically very, very similar. Yeah. Any other questions? We have a problem in America with ADHD being overdiagnosed. Part of that is because the diagnosis is just being done by a stupid checklist. And the fact is, if you have a child at home who's being abused, they show up with all those behaviors. If the child has an anxiety disorder, they show up with the same behaviors. The only way you're going to know if that's ADHD is actually to do a brain map. And we have a lot of children looking like they're ADHD from toxic poisoning. For instance, I had 3 children come in from 3 different school districts who began showing signs of ADHD in 3rd grade. Well, that's impossible. You're born with ADHD. So if you never showed a sign till you were in 3rd grade, that's a wrong diagnosis. And I couldn't figure out what was going on with these kids because there were 3 different towns. But I realized they went to a regional elementary school. And so I sent the EPA into the school, and they found out it was a really old school building where the pipes were soldered with lead, so the children had lead poisoning. So they went into kindergarten normal, and by 3rd grade, 85% of them were diagnosed with ADHD and on ADHD meds. So we have a lot of misdiagnoses.
The reason I ask you that is because I know in a lot of these schools, see kids tell you about on certain IEPs and stuff, they have ADHD. And now that you said, I was wondering, how could these little kids have ADHD?
They
to that
don't.
effect?
They don't. And we have
And they're taking medicine.
Yeah, and we have a bigger problem in the U.S. Our educational system, except for the Adventist program and the Abeka program, is not developmentally appropriate. We are expecting kindergartners to do things their brains aren't ready for until much later. So, of course, they don't pay attention. I had a kindergarten teacher who came in stressed about her job, saying, I can't get these kids to attend. And I said, well, would you bring the lessons in? They were requiring her to teach algebra formulas to 5-year-olds. Totally inappropriate. So, no, the kids aren't going to pay attention.
Certain things, I see something like algebra is being produced.
Yeah, well,
And some of the kids can't even conquer or anything like
the
that.
autism
Yeah,
is
right.
definitely increased dramatically. When I was training for this field, it was 1 in 300,000 children. We're down to 1 in 20. And they are genetic mutations because of toxic poisoning. There's just no other explanation for it.
Sorry, I need to have a session just for myself. Sorry, guys. But I just want to share this small testimony. When my son was a lot younger, when he was diagnosed with being autistic, so I did the brain mapping. Hence, I'm a little familiar with some of the things you're talking about. But the school at the time, he was going to a Montessori school, and they told me that I had to have him tested because they said he was ADHD and anything else you can throw on him, they said he was. So I took him and I had all these different tests done, and they wanted to put him on a medication called Ritalin at the time. But I had decided that I was not going to put him on any medications.
Good
Turned out
choice.
that I was always vegetarian, but I was giving him things like yeast, nutritional yeast, and different things. And I didn't really know about like the dye in the foods and these different things. And I went when I had the brain mapping done, and I went to see a doctor that specialized in neurofeedback and brain training and these different things, which we had to pay for everything
Absolutely.
up front. The insurance paid for nothing. Turned out that had I put him on the Ritalin, he was allergic. It would have impacted his body even worse
Absolutely.
than.
I'm so against
Yes.
medicating our children.
So one of the main things that I had to do was take him off everything that was not organic. I also had to take him off anything that had any kind of dyes or
Yes.
anything that was processed. And once I did that, the child just changed.
Yeah.
It's like everything, it was a complete turnaround
Yeah.
once I took
What
him off
we
all
know
those
is
things.
that those
Yeah.
additives do not cause the autism, but they
Right.
dramatically
Enhance.
aggravate it.
Right, it does.
So
right.
I'm constantly telling all my patients, organic, organic,
Right.
organic,
Yeah.
because it's the only way to protect yourself.
Right. But even the dyes, that's very
yeah.
big.
You
Because
can't have dyes.
You give your kids all these drink and stuff that's out there. They all have these things that are
Yeah.
that are
No, you
so
can't do
unhealthy
that.
for them. And sugar is just terrible. So once I took all of that out of his diet, and it's not that I was giving him really unhealthy things because I was always vegetarian, but
Right.
some things your body can still react to it, even if it's good for one.
Absolutely.
It's not necessarily
Especially
good for another.
if you have some genetic mutations from all the
Yes.
toxic exposure.
Yeah.
And people ask, why are our children having more mutations? If you think about us who are baby boomers, most of us grew up on organic. It wasn't called that, but it was organic. They, over time, started putting unhealthy things into our foods. It was the same brand names. So we didn't recognize that was happening.
And I just want to say, when I took my son off all those things, every year he had to be tested. And when he was tested before we moved to the Middle East, they said they found nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So all the things that they had found, as a matter of fact, the school kept saying, "What did you do? What was it that you did?"
Yes.
Because they had insisted if I didn't put him on the Ritalin, he could not come back to school. Well, I chose not to give him the Ritalin, but do everything natural. And when the last time they tested him, it's like nothing was in his system.
And by the way, a lot of schools tell parents that, and that's illegal. They can't tell you that you have to medicate your child. But yeah, we definitely want to go with all organic. Any more questions?
You keep saying ADHD. What about ADD?
They're the same thing. They are exactly the same condition. The only difference is that those with what they call the H deal with the excessive slow wave by increasing their movement. Those who don't have the H deal with their excessive slow wave activity by daydreaming. Same exact brain map. It's just most girls will deal with it by daydreaming, and most boys will deal with it by moving more.
Oh.
But if you look on a brain map, they're the same disorder.
They used to call my son a space cadet.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because he used to daydream.
That happens a lot. Now, the good thing, that's the other thing. ADHD, when it's hereditary, is not an illness. It's actually a state that permits people to deal with high-stress situations better than the rest of us. Most paramedics have ADHD. Most firemen have ADHD. Most jet pilot people have ADHD. Because the rest of us can't do those jobs. We'll have panic attacks. America was built by men with ADHD. That's who came over on those boats and went out into the wilderness and dealt with animals they had never seen and tribes they had never seen. ADHD is not an illness. The reason we treat it like it is because our schools are run by all women. And boys should not be taught by women after the age of 7. They need to be taught by men. They need to be outdoors and learning and moving. And yeah. Yeah, that's why we're saying all these boys have ADHD, because there aren't strong men in their life teaching them the things they need. Yes, but boys need much more physical activity than girls. Yes.
I have a question. Dementia runs in my family, my mom's side and my dad's side. And lately I've been noticing personally, let's say I put something in the sink, just give an example. I don't even remember putting something in the sink. You know, like my brain cannot even, like, did I just put that in the sink or did I lock the door? I have to backtrack myself all the time. Is that signs of dementia? Or?
It is. But, we would have to look at what's your health like. Do you have high blood pressure? Do you have high cholesterol?
I don't.
All of those issues. Are you on any medications?
I had a COVID vaccine.
I didn't hear you, hon.
I had a COVID vaccine. Is that maybe the
Well,
vaccine?
I could do one brain map and tell you if it's the COVID vaccine.
I might have to do the cognitive evaluation.
Yeah.
I might definitely have to do that.
Obsessive compulsive disorder. It's when you're really constantly anxious and you need everything perfect or you get upset. I do.
I found out that I guess children with autism are very smart.
Oh, it has nothing to do with IQ. Nothing.
Nothing. And ADHD has nothing to do with IQ either. Oh.
In fact, a group that's erroneously diagnosed as ADHD all the time are gifted. Gifted children are bored in our schools because our schools are too easy. And so the gifted kids don't pay attention in class because the work's too easy for them. And they get diagnosed as ADHD incorrectly all the time.
Oh yeah, I know that.
OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder.
What about what?
Same as Al.
What
You know
was
it.
what was the issue about OCD?
That's all I have. I didn't know how many people were going to be here.
What was the issue about OCD?
She was asking about the characteristics of OCD because she thinks she has that.
Does that have anything to do with what we're talking about today?
Well, OCD is an anxiety disorder where if you are anxious, you try to control the environment around you to reduce your anxiety. So you want everything perfect, done certain ways, and you get annoyed if people don't do it that way. Yeah. And that can also be diagnosed in the brain mapping, too. Well, I think we covered a lot of ground. I hope it was informative. Pleasure
Yes,
talking
thank
with
you.
everybody.
In collaboration with the Family Life Department, take pleasure in presenting you with this small token of our love and our appreciation for what you have done here this afternoon. You can't wait to be talking about. Come again, you hear? Please come again.
Okay, we thank Dr. Susan Crump for coming. It was a short notice she received, and we feel especially blessed that Sister Reed was the contact person for her. Yes. We feel good that she has her own practice. She's in Islands County, yes. She's licensed and she works with the insurance, as she told you. When I read up that she was a neuropsychologist, I did a little homework to look
What it is.
yes, what it entails. So again, we thank you for coming. We hope that you all will be blessed. Let us stand for prayer.
Could I just say one thing I
Yes.
forgot? I forgot to mention, if any of you do want to come to my office, you should ask your primary care physician for a referral. And the reason is your insurance will say you don't need that, but then you come and they deny it, saying that your doctor didn't send you. So to avoid a problem, just say to your doctor you'd like to get a cognitive checkup, and they know me, they can fax over a referral. Even the straight Medicare plans. Yeah.
All right.
I would like to say a big thank you to everyone that took part in this great event today. We had a beautiful day, and a lot of work went on in the background. We have some very faithful people. I won't begin to call names because if I start, I'm going to get in trouble. There's so many of them. Thank you, thank you, thank you all.
We just thank our sensational seniors.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Amen.
Do you know if David could get my flash drive
We
back?
need to pray.
David,
Pray.
I hope David is nearby. She needs a flash drive. Let us pray. I'll contact David. Father, we thank you for these moments spent from morning till now in your courts. Thank you for all those who were involved, who participated, who led out, who interacted. We truly thank you. Thank you for bringing Dr. Crump to give us all these notices, information that will help us to be better sensational seniors, knowing that our physical is connected to our social, connected to our emotional, to our spiritual, and even our psychological. Thank you for helping us to be better ambassadors for you in these end times. In Jesus' name.
Amen. Thank you, Dr. Crump. You'll hear from me. Okay. She needs her flashlight.
Yeah, David, I hope we can see.
Okay. They probably need
Is
to call
David nearby? Yes. I don't think so. Yeah, but